Gustavo Cervera is a man of the sea, but to be honest, you can be really sure of what he really is. Let me explain. In his 20s, he started to study civil engineering, but after Fidel Castro requested the youth to join the Navy, he accepted and graduated from the Naval Academy as a sailor. 2 years after that, he started working with the Hydrographic Service of the Navy, and he spent 30 years in that labor. After that, he went to the University of Havana to study mathematics, and as he started to work as a teacher, he decided to also become a historian and to teach that subject. He has written several books about naval history and naval tactics. Since 1991, he works as a naval and military history researcher at the Cuban History Institute, and in addition, he is a member of the Uruguay Maritime and Pluvial History Academy, among other prestigious Cuban and international institutions. With the Dr. Gustavo Cervera, we have the honor to talk today in From Havana. Well, thank you, Professor, so much for accepting this interview. It's a pleasure for me, especially. I want to know your name. Do you have anything to do with the Admiral of the Spanish Navy, Pascual Cervera?
No, I didn't find any relationship with the family of Pascual Cervera. Direct relationship, but I know some of them. Some of them are my friends.
Personally?
Personally. Some years ago, I was with my wife in Cadiz, invited by the Cervera's family, and we were in some historical places in this town. For example, in the grave of Admiral Pascual Cervera. And also I was present during the ceremony of the centennial of the Battle of Santiago de Cuba, of the 3rd of July,
yes.
Santiago de Cuba. I was present in this ceremony.
The ceremony was in Santiago de Cuba or in Santiago? And any member of the family were there, of the Cervera family?
Yes, we are 3 members of the family.
Well, but because you shared the same surname, so did you had any relationship with the sea, or your family had any relationship with the ocean when you were a kid?
My family had a relation with the sea, because my grandfather, yes, was a fisherman.
Oh.
In the town of Batavano, in the south coast of Cuba.
And you used to go to the sea with him? You used to see that?
No, I didn't know him.
Oh.
He's
so many, years of difference.
When I was born,
yes,
he was died.
Okay, and then how did you get to the Navy? You spent 30 years of service,
yes,
with the Navy. How was the process to get to the Navy?
Oh, I was a student.
Okay.
And a student of civil engineering.
Okay.
But I lived in a student's residence, who is in the corner of Street 25th,
okay,
and G.
Okay.
G Avenue in the Vedado.
Yeah, now there's a residence.
And in this place, personally, Fidel Castro asked for volunteers to the Cuban Revolutionary Navy. It was at the beginning of 1961. Those were very difficult times.
Yeah.
It was just before the mercenary invasion, yes, of Bay of Pigs. It was in March, only one month before, yes, before this invasion. And he asked among the students for volunteers. Then, some days after that, I was in the Soviet Union,
yes,
and in the Black Sea.
Okay.
And I was prepared as commander of the torpedo boat.
but that was an important moment.
It was a very important change in my
Yeah,
life.
and talking about changes, how did you get to the hydrographic service of the Marine?
Yes, I was in the Navy. After I was, as I said, commander for torpedo boat. But I had some problems with my eyes.
And to be a
And
commander
I was transferred, I was assigned to the hydrographic service.
Yes.
It was in the beginning of the year 1963, and then I was in this hydrographic office. The hydrographic office. The names are were changing. Hydrographic office. After that was hydrographic service.
Oh, okay.
And then it was a very interesting job, because it permitted me to know all the coast and all the seas around Cuba.
Yeah, because you spent time in the sea. We were talking behind cameras that your job there was to make the charts and to check the lighthouses.
Yes, and then I personally work in the sounding, hydrographic sounding, in some of the most important bays and places of the Cuban coast. For example, Cárdenas, Varadero, Matanzas, Havana, Mariel, Cabañas, Payahonda, Santa Lucia, and in the south I was in Guayabal, the south coast of Camagüey, and also in Siguanea, in the south coast of, in these times, Isles of Pines.
Yeah,
Now,
in the south
south.
of the island. You were talking that you were a student, a civil engineering student, but you have a degree on mathematics, on math.
Yes.
How do you can find a nexus between the sea and mathematics?
Nautical science, all the nautical science are based in mathematics. For example, hydrographic oceanography, meteorology, navigation, and so on. And also the fundaments, the scientific fundaments of the naval tactics. And when I was the scientist that was transferred to the Naval Academy as professor, I began to study mathematics at the university, because my life was changed 10 years ago.
Yes.
And then I applied this new knowledge to the activities that I had.
Of course.
Of course. And then I simultaneously with my career in the university, I taught the science, meteorology, hydrographic, and of course mathematical statistics and mathematical analysis. I taught all these disciplines in Naval Academy.
So far we have that you spent 30 years in the Navy, 28 of those years in the hydrographic service, and you get to the university to study math. But how did you get into history, or it was history that arrived to your life?
Because I was a professor in the Department of Tactics and Naval History.
Okay.
In the Naval Academy, and then I was also occupied and also interested.
Interest.
I was interested in the history, especially in the naval history. Then, when I was assigned to uh, Military Academy, Máximo Gómez.
Yes.
In one semester, I taught naval history. In the second semester, I taught mathematical applied to naval text.
But that's a crazy thing to do, and it was a lot of job, and you have to have your thoughts straight in order to do that, because math and history is.
But I think that all the sciences are complementary, and for example, I was interested also in the history of the mathematics.
Oh.
It's a very interesting thing, and also, of course, in the naval history, and mathematics helped me in many to understand better some of the, for example, the conduct of some battles in the naval history.
Talking about battles, do you think, as an expert, that Cuban naval history during the Independence War is not a fully addressed subject in our history classes, in history investigations? It's not very studied as deeply.
Repeat, please.
I think, from my perception, that the naval history in the independence war period is not fully addressed.
The naval history of the independent wars, Cuban independent wars, is an aspect that was studied from the point of view of the Spaniard, from the view of the Cubans, from the point of view of the Americans. But it is necessary, is my opinion, to integrate all this knowledge, all this opinion, all these different documental sources to get a history a more comprehensive, more integrated, more objective. This aspect, especially of the Cuban independent wars, is less studied than the operations of what was the cause of the war in land.
Yes.
But also these operations, these land operations, these land campaigns has the trouble that I said first.
I have it very fresh. I was a student, and the only part of that history that I learned at school was the Battle of Santiago de Cuba, no more. And the Maine and all the...
And, but it is, I think that, for example, all the expeditions in the first war, in the second war, and in the third war are less studied than the land operations or the land campaigns, and they have this trouble, that is only the opinion of one side.
Yes.
In the case of the Cuban historians, to study this aspect of the war, it is has some difficulties. For example, is the access of to the sources, not our own sources, but the sources of the adversary,
in
Spaniards,
Spain,
and the sources of the American archives.
I think that those are more difficult than the Spanish.
Yes.
You went to Spain and you spent 3 months, I guess, in Spain.
In Spain I was more than 10 times. I work in the archives naval hives in Spain, and studied in these times, for example, all the siege of Havana by the England, and the period that was after that, and also the 98 war.
Yes.
As a result, I published some books about these times of these historical aspects. But I can say that it's only a little part of all the material, of all the documental sources that are in this archive.
In those archives are objective. I mean, in viewing that were the Spanish who wrote those memories, those archives. Are those archives objective? They tell their own story of the war. Is that their story is the real story? That was what happened. How can you deal with that?
The documents are documents.
Of course.
And it's also that you can the historian make his
Yes.
his own interpretation about this information. The information is can be manipulated or can be studied with seriously studied. I think that. For example, in the last times, there is a tendency to write more also in the Spanish writers, in the Spanish historians, to write more objective. But in the first times, of course, they were conducted by the passion.
Yeah, and by the pride of I'm the one to be the loser of this war, and I want to write my version.
I think that there is a time, sufficient time, that to study this period of the historical period with without this pride, without this passion.
Yeah, with that you told me it's a great answer, because now I know that in order to interpret a piece of information, you have to know background knowledge, because you can how like we say in Spanish, irte con la primera bola. That's not the thing. Talking about history and interpretation, you told me once over the phone, that history is a life thing. It is a life being.
Yeah.
And as a matter of that, how can you deal with the fact that history changes every day, and you have the same textbooks, for example, in schools, and you don't adapt what is happening or what is changing in a history to a classroom?
But one thing is to investigate the history, to work in the archives, and to try to interpret and the past. Another thing is to transport this knowledge to the text in the school. I think that each level of the school has their objective, and of course the text art or had
program. I mean.
No, deben ser, es lo que yo quería decir, deben ser adaptados a cada edad, a cada nivel de conocimiento.
Should be adapted to every level of knowledge and age. Yes.
And of course, it's necessary systematically to transfer the new knowledge, the new interpretation to the text.
Yes.
It is continuously processed.
Yes.
Of course, each generation of historians has its own interpretation because there are new knowledge, new methodology, and so on. And then I think that is a continuously process.
Yes. Do you think in this continuously process that history before 59, 1959, and why not after that, is fully told? I mean, there is some places that need to be more investigated yet.
Of course, I think that it is a process that has no end. It's continuously. I cannot say because how are the texts. I don't know the texts that are now in the school, but I think that it is a continuously process that in the interpretation, the discovery of new sources and so on.
Well, Professor, it was a really clarifying interview. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope we can talk more in other moments, other time. Maybe in a boat. Who knows?
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. And thank you for your
Thank you.
questions.